you've kind of, in this time, I guess we've known each other, what, about like a month or so now?
About a month, yeah.
Yeah, right. So you've armed me with a lot of really, interesting um, information, right? I mean, that, you know, so I guess, I want to know, like, you grew up in China, right? Hong Kong, right?
Well,
And,
formative years, I was born in Shanghai,
yeah, you're born in Shanghai, that's right.
but
Yeah,
that was during the Sino-Japanese War,
okay,
or the start of the Sino-Japanese War,
right.
36.
How,
So
how did your parents get there?
my my grandfather was Chinese.
Okay,
My grandmother, on my maternal side, was pure English.
okay,
Uh, they both lived in Liverpool, England. Uh, my father, I don't know very much about, but his parents also lived in Liverpool. And uh, my maternal grandparents went to Hong Kong, I think it was around about 33, 19,
okay.
no, went to Shanghai,
To Shanghai in 1933.
around about 33. And my mother married my father out there,
Okay,
but they were, I was born in 36,
okay,
and we stayed there about 9 months, and then we were evacuated to Hong Kong because
oh, that's right. You evacuated to Hong Kong and then to Australia.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So the Japanese started investing fairly heavily in China in the mid-30s. And it got to the point where Europeans were evacuated to Hong Kong. So we got there in, I would say, 37 and stayed there. Then my mother and I were evacuated. The men had to stay in Hong Kong. And my grandmother stayed in Hong Kong. It was women and children evacuated to, first of all, Philippines.
From Hong Kong to
Hong
the
Kong to
Philippines.
Philippines.
Right. Oh, okay.
And then when it looked like the Philippines were getting ready to be invaded, we were then further evacuated to Australia.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
So that was my mother and myself.
Yeah. Do you remember life in Shanghai?
Not at all. I do know that I was brought up as most European families were, with a lot of armours, the Chinese servants.
Because remember you told me that you
Spoke Chinese.
Spoke Chinese, right?
Yeah,
right.
I probably spoke more Chinese than I did English
right.
at that time. And we did right up until we got to Australia. I know that because my mother used to tell me that other evacuees and I would be travelling on the local transport, the trams. And people would be making rude remarks about the passengers in Chinese.
In Chinese, yeah. Okay. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, it was a tough time really because my mother arrived in Australia with one suitcase or two suitcases,
right.
No job, and a 3-year-old,
right,
basically.
How long were you there in China? I mean, Australia.
Australia.
Sorry.
I left Australia in summer of 45.
Oh, so you're there
the
for
war
about,
was
about 10 years. About 10 years.
No.
Right? Oh, so for I'm sorry, 36.
We got there about 39.
No, 39 to 45. So about 6 years.
Yeah, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It was a difficult time because my mother had to work. There was no
Mm-hmm.
such thing as a welfare state
Right.
at that
Yeah.
time, so my mother had to work.
Mm-hmm.
So initially I was with basically foster parents during the week. But it got to the point where my mother decided that the best thing was I went to boarding school.
Oh, okay.
So I went to boarding school when I was 6. And I stayed there till I left Australia when I was 9.
Okay.
That was with the Jesuits.
Oh, okay.
So um, that was when I learned that all the male members of my family had died.
Oh.
They were.
When you were 9.
I actually learned when I was about 7.
Oh, okay.
My mother received notification that my uncle and father had been part of the Hong Kong Volunteer Reserve, and they'd been killed in the fighting. And my grandfather died as part of the internment. My grandmother stayed there till the end of the war. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. What? So what happened after Australia?
My mother was given the option of, they could see that the end of the war was coming.
Mm-hmm.
So she was asked if she wanted to return to the UK.
Okay.
So she did. She decided to do that. And we were actually on board ship when Victory Europe was declared. So we went there and we stayed with a distant relative for about
in the UK.
UK.
Yeah.
For about a year until my grandmother was repatriated.
Okay.
And then the 3 of us, my mother, grandmother, and myself, we went and lived by ourselves.
Okay. But what about her parents? Your mom's parents?
That was it. My grandmother.
Oh, that was all. Oh, okay.
That was it.
Okay. Wow. So in the war took both grandfathers.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't get that earlier, but I do.
Well, it took all basically my father's side of the family.
Right.
And it left my grandmother.
Okay.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a tough time for my mother. She was,
certainly.
Because, again, as I say, there was no welfare state.
Right.
So after the war, she was looking after basically my grandmother and myself, plus herself.
Right. What was her job? What did she do?
She was a personal secretary at Wagodotis.
Okay.
Wagodotis lifts and elevators.
Okay. Yeah, I know Otis. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Okay. We had lots of them.
Yeah. She'd worked for the company in Shanghai.
Okay.
Then Hong Kong.
Okay.
Then Australia.
She worked for them in Hong Kong to Australia, back to England.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's good of Otis.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
Yeah. She was a really tough woman.
Certainly. Yeah, I think you had to be a lot tougher then than you do now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we have it pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember her. She used to knit her skirts and top.
Okay.
She'd literally knit
right.
skirt and jacket suits. She had 3 or 4 of them, but I mean, she wore them for years.
Right.
Simply because it was that was the cheapest way of doing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of in the olden days, I think a lot of people made their own clothes.
Yeah, they
You know,
did.
I mean, like I said, my grandfather, he was a tailor for his younger years, and I know my wife's family in Fiji, they make all of their own clothes. They buy fabric, and they have a treadle sewing machine, and they make their clothes in Fiji. So, you know,
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. I mean, here you go to Target and buy a shirt for $5,
yeah, that's right.
or somewhere fancy and it's $50 or whatever.
Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah,
those were the days where you your socks had a hole in them. You darn them.
yeah, absolutely.
Your
Oh yeah, yeah.
your cuffs frayed. You turn them
Hmm.
over.
Right,
Collars frayed again.
right,
You turn them over and
right.
resewed them.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
certainly. Yeah. How was transportation like back in Shanghai? Well, I guess what was transportation like in Shanghai? And
no idea.
no idea.
No idea.
How about
From
as you
what I
grew up
can
in
make
Australia?
out, well, boarding school didn't go anywhere.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were always
You were always at school.
right.
Um, interestingly, my mother had a flat just off Bondi Beach, so occasionally I would go and stay with her there, which again was difficult because even during the school holidays, she still had to work.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to stay with another family during the school holidays. But occasionally I could go and spend some time with her.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived not far from Bondi Beach, so we would go off to Bondi in that time.
Yeah. I mean, you made a bunch of friends, I assume, in Australia.
Not really, because
No.
boarding school, it's kind of an amorphous existence. There's a bunch of kids,
Mm-hmm.
and
But you didn't bond with them at all, or
not particularly,
no.
because at that time there was still a lot of resentment, a lot of racial
Okay.
tension there,
Mm-hmm.
because the Australians were scared to death they were going to be overrun.
Oh, certainly by the immigrants or the refugees.
Well, they're going to be overrun by the Japanese
Okay.
or the Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
and they've still got that mindset today.
Mm-hmm.
They're still very much.
Certainly.
They're trying to avoid it
Right.
as much as they can.
Right.
So they're still very, very wary of Eastern immigrants.
Certainly. Yeah, especially with the proximity.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see that
Mm-hmm.
their immigration policies are not very friendly towards.
Right. What? So you continued school in England?
Yeah, I went to boarding schools
Again in England.
in
right.
England.
Okay. Because you were until you were 9 in Australia, so you were, I'm assuming, 10 probably
Yeah,
by the time you got to England.
uh,
Where did you live in England?
London.
In London, England.
In London.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to boarding school when I was 12.
Okay.
But I learned, this is one of the things I find very strange. At my school, when I was in London, was on the other side of London.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in the East End, so it was E17. The school I went to was SW, Southwest.
Okay.
So it meant that it was a journey across a great part of London.
Okay.
And it makes me laugh today that when parents won't let their children go out.
Oh, like out of their neighborhood,
Out
or
of
their
their
block,
neighborhood.
or whatever. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you made the trek yourself
Because
across the way?
The first 2 or 3 months my grandmother went with me. But then, the cost and her taking me there, coming back home, then having to go again in the afternoon,
Right.
pick me back, just made it impractical. So, by the age of 10, I was going where it was a mile walk to the station, then 2 separate underground routes.
Wow.
Into a very busy part of London.
Right.
And another half mile from the station to the school, and then return the same way. So I was travelling on the underground by myself.
Right. Any issues with that? No.
You kind of learn to look at the dirty old men and just kind of give them the bad
Right.
bad eye, and off you go.
Yeah. Be tough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you picked up a lot of street smarts.
Yeah, you had to.
Yeah.
So, it kind of makes me laugh today when I see parents of 14, 15, 16-year-olds kind of, no, you can't go out of the neighbourhood or whatever. And I think, what are you trying to do? I know they're capable. Certainly. If you let them be.
That's right.
But if you're not going to let them be, they'll be forever
scarred or caution.
Caution, right.
Yeah. I wonder about that. I mean, certainly myself growing up, I mean, in Brownwood, Texas, of all places, I mean, we would go, I rode road race bicycles when Greg LeMond was famous, and we'd go on 60-mile bike rides and not think about it. We left in the summertime. We left when the sun came up and come back when the sun came down. And my mom's parents were basically, I mean, you had to have some kind of credit at some point in time, right? I mean, what was credit like?
Credit at that stage was
non-existent. Yeah. So how do people buy homes, right? I mean, how did you buy a house in them? You had to have cash.
Check. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you had to have cash in the bank.
Oh yeah,
or
you
could do a mortgage.
Yes, cash or a mortgage.
Oh, okay.
But the American banking system was much behind the UK banking system in that respect.
Yeah. Because
in UK, I was with NatWest, and I could go to any NatWest bank, and they would honour my checks. Coming to America, no, you couldn't do that.
Right.
There was no centralised banking system whereby they could transfer money from New York to LA.
Right.
Absolutely none.
Okay.
As I said, it would have taken 6 weeks.
Yeah. And this was when? This was in the 70s?
79.
79. Wow. Okay. So, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
People don't realise, but those were the sort of things that you were looking at.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And so, what were you using that media for?
Because I was interested. The whole reason I went to Saudi Arabia was because I got so disgusted with the UK system. I said, to hell with it. These people are not interested in technology.
Right.
They can't see that this is the way everything has to go. And they're not willing to spend any money.
Right.
And ideas they're not interested.
Right. I mean, but you were rewarded many times. You said before with the other company, right? That you came up with the blueprinting scheme of.
Yeah, that was because they could see an immediate
return.
An immediate return.
Right.
This is a production problem, and by doing this, it immediately resolves the problem.
Right.
But
Right. So they were short-sighted. You would definitely, I mean, you could say they were definitely short-sighted in that
that's the
regards.
whole of the UK, unfortunately. And I don't know how much it's changed now.
Yeah.
It's
So going back to the Westinghouse company, is that where you were in the signal department, right? And you were telling me that they had, every contract was different wiring,
that's right. Everyone was
even
different.
within the contracting,
Yes.
was different wiring and all
Yes.
that. Still hand wired.
Or
So
the way it was they had some basic boards, but even then it wasn't. There was no overall guidance. If for example, I was contracted and some of my work was design a general purpose amplifier so that we can take the modem signals and transmit them over standard telephone wire circuits so that we can link these stations together. Fine. I designed it. Senior engineer approved it. I looked after it, and it would then get put in the system so that when the person designing the overall system said, fine, we need one of these amplifiers or two of these amplifiers. So, right, those will go into slot A and B. We need some other board here and some other board there. And they would build up each system. Right?
But those individual boards got standardized, though, right?
Yeah, they got standardized.
Right.
But as with most things, they put in variants, so you could put options in them. And it was up to the individual engineer how he was going to use the various options.
Okay.
So, they didn't have a standardized design for, hey, this is how we're going to deal with this class of system. It was, look, we want you to go and talk to this customer and then design a system for it using these basic blocks. Right?
It was not like that.
No,
it was okay.
It was like that. You design it
Right.
how you feel.
Right. Yeah, no. But what I was saying was that I thought I understood before that you said each system would basically be its own animal, right?
Yeah, it does.
There was no real standard, except for now. Now I'm understanding that you did have some components
you had some.
that were standardized, but then now you're saying that there was some options, or now I understand rather that there were options that made the system maybe incompatible or something like that with another system.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So I mean, again, that is a very similar problem that we have today, even with some of the projects that I'm involved in, where the customer has a very specific implementation, and if you go look at a previous implementation, try to compare it with what's in production now, it's totally different, right? And it's a very expensive way
I agree with you.
to deal with a repetitive process.
That's exactly right.
When you're talking about automation, which you're familiar with, I am as well, is that you need to have a very repeatable process in order to keep all those back-end systems, I guess, predictable, rather. And so when you have many different customers and you're trying to interface with those different customers, it's important to have a standard.
Yes.
And,
but this has been.
It is an interesting problem that still perpetuates itself today. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
But every company does it, doesn't it?
Yes,
mean,
every company does it.
you look at, you say, well, oh yeah, well, let's take a standard RS-232. You think, what is the standard RS-232? Is it going to be, do we reverse 2 and 3? Or 2 and 3 going to be straight through? Or are we going to use a handshake? Or are we not going to use a handshake?
Right.
Is,
Or what bit?
or what? Yes, that's exactly it. Are we going to use 7-bit? Are we going to use 8-bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we?
Early modems were very interesting to diagnose.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
And these are the sort of problems that we're having, because each engineer said, right, now what am I going to do? Am I going to have 7-bit or 8-bit? Right? Am I going to have parity or no parity?
Or am I just going to ignore the last half of the message? Or what?
That's it. That's exactly right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if they had, I mean, imagine if they had some kind of standards organization. I think they have one. Oh, that's funny. So, okay, so after Westinghouse,
Westinghouse was interesting.
Yeah.
Because there I went from analog work to basically digital.
Yeah.
And then from digital to computing.
Okay. And was this for all that Aramco?
No, this was still Westinghouse.
Oh, still in Westinghouse.
This was Westinghouse, as I say.
So introduction into digital while you were at Westinghouse.
Yeah, because they asked me to implement a maintenance organization.
Okay.
Because the first things that I was doing, after I'd been doing design work, they said, can you go out and help us on site? So I said, sure. So it was on site that I started having to get involved with digital work, because they were dealing with, as most people do, piecemeal. Well, can you check your analog signals? Yes, I've checked my analog signals, and my analog signals are fine. What about your digital signals? Yes, my digital signals are fine. But why isn't this system working? They had nobody who was integrated, right? Which is, again, another problem. But how do we interface, or how do we get people to tie these systems together? Because we were always getting the thing. Right, we're using an IBM Selectric typewriter. No, we're using somebody else's typewriter.
Oh, okay.
No, we're going to use a high-speed punch.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Okay.
And we're sitting around saying, what the hell's happening?
Right.
Or no, the customer's saying, what the hell's happening?
Usually it's the customer that comes calling.
We don't care. You guys sort it out.
Yeah. So
I basically said to them, look, you're really running into problems. Because at this time I was still contractor. You're really running into problems. You've got customers who are saying, get this bloody equipment out.
Oh, it's like pull it out.
Pull it out.
Get it out, get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's too many headaches. I said, you've got to do something with this. You either sort it out or you get out of business, essentially.
Right.
So they said, well, will you take over the maintenance organization and basically get these things resolved for us? So I basically had no option. I had to find out how these systems integrated. So that's how I got into digital field. Because I found, as I said, yes, the um, the audio signals are fine. The levels were absolutely fine. This guy was doing loopbacks on his side, and he said, my stuff is fine. And then I finally checked on something, and um, the way they set up, it was FM modulation, and the way they set it up, the line circuits were offset, well, they were offsetting the thing, so it was falling outside the parameters. So we had to adjust it for online to meet the vagaries of the telephone circuits.
Interesting. So it was. Basically put, for like a layperson, it was basically an alignment issue.
Yes,
right.
It was.
Yeah.
But they'd spent God knows how many weeks
and hours diagnosing the issue,
trying to diagnose it.
Yeah. So what led you to find that? What led you to find the solution to the problem? What kind of clued you in? The aha moment or whatever.
What would happen was that the system would work, and then it would fail. And then I thought, this is essentially a tuning problem. So.
Did it work for for a period of time?
Oh yeah, it would work for maybe half a day or full day, and then all of a sudden it would go off into the weeds.
Okay. So I guess because it was maybe offsetting a little bit more every time.
Line conditions changed.
Oh, line conditions changed by a temperature or?
By a temperature. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the end, I said, right. So let me see how much. See, what they were doing was they were setting it up. And they would sweep it and set it up in the labs. That's how they set them up. I thought, no, this isn't right. So.
Because it wasn't a real world situation?
Wasn't a real world situation.
Okay.
So what I did was I tuned it off to one side. Where does it fail? Off to the other side. Where did it fail? Where was it set? And in the envelope, instead of being here, it was here. So it didn't need to move very much, and it fell outside the envelope. But once I found out, hey, it fails. It goes here, so many turns. It goes from there, so many turns. Set it in the middle. Problem solved.
Very interesting. So it was, ultimately, yeah, so tuning for the offset.
Yeah.
Realigned everything. And so, I guess you're able to set a kind of like a limit for each side or
yes.
whatever. Yeah. Okay. To keep it working because of the environmental changes.
Yeah.
Right?
And once you did that, it was fine.
You were good to go.
Good to go.
Crazy.
But there were lots and lots of problems like that.
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, still everything at this point is hand wired, right?
Yeah.
We're still in the hand wired times.
Yeah.
Nobody's got like true circuit boards with traces or.
Just beginning.
Just beginning to be.
This is the stage where you're just beginning to get encapsulated transistors.
Okay.
Just about.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember I was working on a job on the Blue Steel project. And it was a time when they started losing jet aircraft, passenger aircraft. So we had to work on the initial black boxes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the initial black boxes were hand wired and then encapsulated
Okay. In epoxy.
in epoxy.
Right.
Um,
And so, what kind of storage were they using for that? Like a tape or a...
no. Uh,
How on earth did they record the information into there and keep it, especially in a crash type situation?
can't remember. That wasn't my
Okay.
um, that wasn't my area of responsibility at that
Right.
time. All I know that I was working on building some of these things and testing them.
Right. What time? What time is this now? What?
This is 60. 60, 64,
64. Okay.
63, 64 time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So 63, 64. I'm trying to think. I used to have a Lincoln Continental, 1963. It was an awesome car. What did it have in it? I think it just had an AM radio.
Yeah, that would have been right.
Yeah, I don't think it had like an 8-track or anything like that. I'm trying to think of when 8-tracks came out. Because I know my grandfather had like a 70s or late. Yeah, he had an early 70s in it, Mercedes, and it had an 8-track in it. A huge collection of 8-tracks.
I remember when I put a radio in my 444, it was valve,
Yeah.
and you had a
Oh yeah, my '58 Dodge had a tube AM radio.
and you had a power supply which was stuck under the seat,
Right.
and a big cable which
Yeah.
had all heaters and everything.
Right. Yeah. It took like you turn the car on and then you could turn the radio on, and then about 2 minutes later the radio would turn on.
That's right.
You turn the radio on, but it would be 2 minutes before you could hear anything. Or sound. Yeah. It sounded so amazing, especially for AM radio. Tube radio, I think, is really something interesting. I really, even for amplifiers, just the sound is so much different. It's like listening to a record versus a CD or something.
Yeah.
There's definitely, in the square wave that is digital, there is certainly loss of detail, right, that comes from a record, which just sounds so much more inviting, I guess. I don't have any records, but I used to.
Yeah, I used to have a stack of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what happens after Westinghouse? After Westinghouse,
Westinghouse, I went to. While I was in Westinghouse, I went to South Africa.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you went to South Africa.
Yeah.
You worked for Westinghouse in South Africa.
Yeah, I went troubleshooting.
Okay.
Down to South Africa. Was there for a year in Joburg.
Okay. Troubleshooting what type of equipment? Similar.
It was.
Yeah, it works really well. Cool. Okay, so we got about an hour and a half left of video time.
Okay.
It's amazing that, like say, back in the days of camcorders and stuff, you would have, maybe 30 minutes or so of of time to record a video or something like that. And this thing, I mean, can record. Well, like I say, it's got two of Saki's basketball games on it still that I haven't downloaded, and then now it's got basically 3 hours of us talking here, which is crazy. And this thing, I don't even know how long this thing says it can take 44 hours
Boy,
of audio, which is pretty phenomenal. But I think the battery's going to give out well before that. It's almost on its last leg too. That's fine. Okay, so it says you're saying that while with Westinghouse you went to South Africa,
yeah, I went to,
Johannesburg.
yeah, I was working.
Yeah.
We're installing equipment for their train system.
Oh, okay.
Westinghouse is very big on railway signalling.
Right.
So
Yeah, I've seen their stamps on everything from the bells to the light bulbs and everything. Yeah.
So we were installing a system for South African Railways. So I was sent out there to look after it. And I came back, and the UK was going through a hard time. Big recessions.
Oh.
The country was going through turmoil at the time. It was a period of strikes everywhere. And,
oh, okay. I think the 70s were hard for a lot of countries. Yeah.
So I came back and I was made redundant. So putzed around for about almost a year, but then I decided to go first time to Saudi Arabia. So I went to Saudi on a 1 year contract for tropospheric scatter.
Okay, the tropospheric scatter radio transmission system,
yeah.
Right? Okay, I remember you telling me this. Yeah. Yeah.
Saudi Air Force system.
Okay.
Interesting, but bit of a diversion, really.
From what you wanted to be doing, or?
It was just everything was in a state of flux. England was going through basically a bad period. It had just gone decimal. It had just gone from pound, shillings and pence to decimal pound.
Explain to me about that. What's that? You mean like a pound and a half or something like that, or pound 0.5?
The pound used to be £1 was 20 shillings, and a shilling was 12 pence.
Okay.
And a pence was further divided into halfpenny and a farthing, a quarter penny.
Okay.
A farthing.
Okay. I don't know anything about the English monetary system.
So that was a traditional English system.
Okay.
And they, in 71, 72, they decided to go only pounds, pence. Right? They did away with the shillings.
Oh, okay. So inflation happened, basically.
The whole thing went. Lots of things happened. That was part of it. So the country was going through skyrocketing inflation. Business was terrible. So, very few jobs around anyway. So I went to Saudi. worked for Lockheed.
Okay. This
Lockheed.
is when you started with Lockheed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lockheed took over a contract from Rolls-Royce
Okay.
for this tropospheric scatter system. Wasn't a good contract, large contract.
On your side or for Lockheed?
Lockheed didn't want to be in the business.
Oh, okay.
They were given it because of the Rolls-Royce RB211 engine problems.
Oh, okay.
And Lockheed also had problems of their own, but for whatever reason, Rolls-Royce took most of the brunt of the blame for it. So Lockheed got the contract. Trouble was that what they did was they used it as a method to get CIA, mainly CIA people, operatives into. So
amazing how that works. Yeah.
So all the technicians were Brits.
Right.
All the management was American.
American CIA agents.
American CIA agents. So.
Interesting. Yeah. And so how long was that for? A couple of years?
1 year.
1 year?
Yeah. Actually, I broke the contract.
Oh, okay.
This was one time where I broke a contract. I was a site manager for Jeddah, and as a site manager, I was responsible for the recreation facilities. And we had a couple of apartments out on the Gulf, and we had a soling, 26-foot
sailing. This is when you imported the boat.
No, I didn't import it. They had a soling.
This is your introduction to sailing, right? and they had the soling.
They had the soling. Well, the soling was there.
Right.
And a friend and I were out, and we were just taking the boat out, and a couple of girls said, "Can we join you?" Sure, no problem. Turned out they were a couple of princesses who'd been snatched from the US along with all the rest of the Saudi royals who had been bringing discredit to the kingdom, as they put it, through general obnoxious behaviour.
They ended up with you on a sailboat.
And two of them ended up with me on a sailboat.
Yeah.
But these girls just had no idea of what they were doing. And they were just completely out of control. They had all the money in the world. They were on drugs. They thought they could do anything, but they couldn't. And they'd come by our villa 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Big black limousine come up. We come to party.
Yeah. No, I have to work tomorrow.
I have to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We'll talk to our cousin. No, our uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle is the king. So I got threatened. You see those girls, you're going to end up in a hole in the desert. So I said, fine, thank you very much. So it was coming up to Ramadan, so I refused to get my hair cut. So they said, you're not getting a haircut? Fine. Out. I said, thank you very much. And off I went.
Right. So I mean, you didn't break the contract though. They fired you.
Right.
Because you wouldn't get a haircut.
Right.
Yeah. so you didn't break the contract. Yeah. And so where did you go back to? You went back to England then, or?
I went back to England
Yeah.
and I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to, I'd been in basically management positions where I'd been in Westinghouse, even though I didn't have any qualifications, but I had guys with 1 degree, 2 degrees working for me.
Yeah.
I thought I need to get some qualifications, some proper qualifications. But at this time, I'm coming up to late 30s. So I thought I would try to join civil service.
Okay.
Because with the civil service, they encourage higher education,
or
continuing education. So I joined the Home Office back as a technician, working in the R&D labs again. And I did go to school, but then I got involved in a couple of designs, which for them were fairly advanced. And I ended up doing a design, sounds stupid nowadays, but this is the mid-70s. They wanted the Home Office looks after all of the police, all of the fire services, looks after immigration. It's a big deal in the UK. What they wanted was, they had just introduced CRTs into the police. And what they wanted was hard copy. They didn't have hard copy. And terminals and such like in those days didn't provide hard copy. So they wanted to produce a hard copy. So I was given the job of designing
a printer.
Basically, an printer interface.
Okay. You killed many trees.
Right. Which I did for them.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, what kind of printer?
No, a printer interface.
Oh, a printer interface. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
A stupid little printer interface.
Yeah. So what was the output device?
The output device was a printer.
Yeah, but what, I mean, like
dot matrix.
A dot matrix. Oh, okay.
I think it was dot matrix. No, it wasn't dot matrix. Dot matrix hadn't been invented at that time.
Oh, maybe it was a typewriter, a teletype.
It was a teletype machine.
Right. Huh.
No, it was a dot matrix. Yes, okay. It was. But it wasn't inkjet. It was.
Not an inkjet, but yeah, it was the
impact.
Impact. Yeah.
It was impact one.
It's the really loud, screaming printers.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I used to have a couple of those. Yeah.
So I designed an interface for them. But for me, it was an interesting exercise because I started designing with CMOS. I decided to use parallel interface.
Starting off with some good standards there.
But what I also decided to do was to be able to connect several terminals to one printer.
All right. Networking.
So I networked them.
Yeah.
Um, so I got this thing working. Actually, didn't take that long, because it's uh, 4K memory. So just dumped it. But what I also did was I did a comparison because I didn't know how good the transmission was at that time. So I thought, okay, let's let's be a little bit clever here. Do a dump. Next cycle, do another dump. Do a comparison. If they're fine, output.
Okay.
Um,
That is very smart. That is a practice used today, for many things. Absolutely.
right. So it got fairly involved because not only was I doing the design, I was doing the wiring, doing the testing, and procurement and everything. So what was happening was my boss, I realized, look, I'm not going to be able to do my degree and do this kind of work. And I realized, hey, I'm not going to do this for 4 years.
The degree.
Right, I'm not going to carry on working, doing
working.
this kind of work.
Yeah, for 4 years.
For 4 years, being
Right.
paid peanuts.
Right.
Because, the senior deputy director of the Home Office, who is a fairly senior civil servant, said, look, we're sorry, we can't increase your salary. You're
A civil servant.
You're a civil servant,
Yeah.
and you've got to have paperwork. And if you haven't got paperwork, we can't pay you. And I thought, what do I want? Do I want to just say to hell with the degree and just go and say, I'm not going to do any more of this kind of work, which I could have done. I said, no, to hell with it. I'll finish this project and I'm out of here, I'll go somewhere else.
Right.
Because I could see that the industry was beginning to pick up again. Anyway, the project worked. This was when I started getting into, I'd saved enough money when I was in Saudi and working with the Home Office. So I decided to buy a computer. So I bought a DEC PDP-11.
A DEC PDP-11. Okay, I don't know what that is, but I'll have to look it up later for reference.
DEC PDP-11, 16-bit machine.
Okay. What time was this?
This was the mid-70s.
Okay. This is the same computer you flew to New York for?
No.
Oh,
this,
no. Oh, okay.
This is a hardwired machine. It did have some printed circuit boards in it.
Okay.
It had 4K of core memory, no, had 8K of core memory, real core memory. The processor was this by this.
Whoa.
In a 19-inch rack.
Wow. And you bought this for your personal use?
Bought this for my personal use.
Okay.
In a 6-foot rack.
In a 6-foot rack?
Yeah.
Wow.
With a high-speed paper tape reader and punch, and AR-15 teletype. Do you know the teletype?
I mean, I know what a teletype is, but I don't know the model number.
Yeah, well, this was the teletype, spinning head up and down.
Yeah.
10 characters a second.
Yeah, it kind of pivots.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't pivot.
It doesn't pivot.
It just
turns
spins.
and comes up and down.
Oh, okay.
The pivoting one is the IBM.
Oh,
Selectric.
The Selectric. That's right. You're right. Yeah. Okay.
teletypes were the backbone of, you know, most things actually. You know, anybody who sent a fax
Right.
or anything, not a fax, a
Telegram or something.
telegram or
Yeah.
something like that,
Teletype.
went on teletype.
Yeah.
So real rugged,
Mm-hmm.
but bloody slow.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
But I learned basic on that machine.
Okay. Okay.
Had to load a paper tape
Mm-hmm.
to do it all, and that was when I got started. I read about the microprocessors, and I got the guy who was taking over the project from me, who was he was a degreed engineer, and he was asked to take over my project after I left, so he could see it through into production. And I said to him, "Look, I'll do all the rest of the stuff, but I need to buy no overtime or anything like that. But if you buy me the chips, so I can build a microprocessor system." So he bought me the chips to build a 6800 development system. And I literally hand wired the thing. And that was, I don't know if you ever used it, solderable enamel wire.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's basically encapsulated in epoxy. It's red, right?
Right.
And then you have to scrape off the epoxy.
No, you don't scrape it. You just heat it. If you use a hot enough iron,
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right. It burns off.
it burns
That's right.
straight off.
Right. Right.
So that's what I built it with.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Having built it, I then had to build a logic analyzer because they were wiring short circuits and various other things. But I built a logic analyzer and I got it working.
Wow. If you need a computer and you don't have one, you just built it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. God, that's amazing.
But I built it as an interface to the PDP-11 because I thought it's going to be easier to make interfaces to interface with the 6800 than to build interfaces to interface with the deck.
What drew you to that conclusion?
Because things I was interested in, first of all, I wanted to get rid of the bloody teletype. I wanted a CRT monitor.
Okay. You wanted to go the other direction from hard copy.
Yes.
You were done with hard copy. You
Yes.
were like, I made the hard copy thing where I want a digital interface.
I want digital interface, and I wanted magnetic storage rather than core storage.
Yeah.
So that was the drive. So I finished with the Home Office and I went to work for Hunting Surveys. And I worked with them in doing stuff in the North Sea, laying pipeline for the oil fields out there. Because in those days, if you wanted to know where you were, you had to buy a complete system so that you could GPS it. And
GPS it?
Yeah.
GPS?
Yeah.
In the late 70s?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't
handheld.
It wasn't handheld.
Okay. How big was the GPS?
Big. You're talking
dishwasher size?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
and we'd either put them on the lay barge, or we'd put them on all sorts of interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
We did side scan sonar
Okay.
to check state of pipelines, said position fixing for laying pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Then they bought some Hewlett Packard computers to do some other things. There were some real precision, what they considered real precision stuff, because they were bending risers up to do various other things. So I got involved in the beginning of the hardcore computing stuff. And again, we were having to interface, and each one was becoming to be a problem. Because you had to go this is a Hewlett Packard computer, you've got to get Hewlett Packard parts and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to them, hey, look, we've got to interface with some array down, to measure engine RPM or whatever the case might be. How are we going to do it? And it was so, you're treading on everybody's toes. You've got guys there who, okay, they were degreed, but they hadn't been keeping up to date.
Okay.
So you're trying to explain things to them and saying, we need to be doing whatever.
Right.
And they're saying, oh no, we can't afford that. And, again, design it for this job.
Yeah. They're basically, it seems to me that, there's people that are, I guess they're, I don't know, they're losing the foresight to.
That's exactly right.
To build things really to. They've lost the foresight of their duties ultimately.
That's right.
They can't see. We have this issue still today. People say, "Oh, well, I'm going to make this thing work for today and this solution only," as opposed to
That's right.
if you just spend a little bit longer, thinking about what's going to happen next, talking about security, the big Equifax data security problems that we've been having, and the NSA guys. If someone spent just a little bit more time thinking about security, then maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Some contractor had not have lost his password in the trash can or something
Right.
like that, then, or kept it written down on a spreadsheet somewhere, we probably would have been safe today. But now, millions of people's private information is exposed to the world. So, yeah. Yeah, so, it seems like, but it seems like, though, someone that was degreed, although I think it's really a mindset.
It's mindset.
It's a mindset.
It's a complete mindset.
To blame it on a school system.
No.
But yeah, it's a mindset. You have to think of a lot of possibilities. I would not put it on one person to say, well, you have to think of all the possibilities of someone attacking our security systems, or you have to think of all the possibilities, for making a tape recording device or whatever. But certainly when you get, a group of people in a company, you got to have some kind of check and balance, really, especially in somebody that's laying pipe under, however many meters of water, it's probably 100 meters more, 1,000 meters of water that they're laying pipe it's going to have a serious economic and commercial impact on society, basically. Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy system.
Yeah.
I mean, I got told off
No.
when I was at Hunting's because when they found out basically I was computer literate, they said, "Why did you come in for so little money?"
Oh. Wow.
I
Okay.
said, because what happened at that time was there was a national freeze on salaries, and you were only permitted to give somebody a certain percentage rise.
Oh.
And having come from the Home Office, where I'd been paid civil service salary, when I went to Hunting's, basically that was the salary that.
Well, you didn't know to ask for more.
No, that was.
Oh, that was the salary you could get.
That was the salary you could get.
Oh.
You couldn't say, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to jump to another company and I'm going to get."
What? It doesn't work like that?
No, not at that time.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's terrible.
So,
wow.
So, they found that I was basically computer literate. And then they're freaking out because, oh my God, what the hell do we do if this guy decides to leave us?
Yeah. Uh-oh. Hang on a second. I'm also having battery issues on this one. Hang on, let me pause this for a second. Later. They're getting old enough now though, that they understand that, especially Saki and Warren, because they have all their electronics and they're pretty good about making sure that when they're not using it, they plug everything back in and all, and it's they're good about it. Yeah, so we're good. So yeah, so that's the yeah, I mean the deep sea pipeline is really interesting, especially what was this? This was like late '70s,
Mid 70s.
mid '70s.
Mid
Yeah.
70s.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the end, I just said to hell with it. It's not worth it.
Right.
It really isn't worth it.
Yeah, and it's really a shame too that So what was that? Was that a government mandate that they
At that time,
wouldn't
yeah.
let you, like if you jump from one company to another, you couldn't get like a, well, I guess in today's $10,000 raise or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
so
it was
salary back then for that type of position was still in the thousands per year. In the thousands per year. Wow.
by that time probably can't remember, but 4,000,
4,000 a year.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Wow. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. I mean, again, the power of inflation, is phenomenal, right? Yeah.
So I just
So, what were your living arrangements then, too? What was?
at that time my mother was living alone. So, because I was more transient, having been to Saudi Arabia, come back, and
Right.
various other things, single. That time I was helping my mother out because we had a big house,
Right.
so she had part of it and I had
Oh,
part
okay.
of it.
Oh, so you all had a house together at that time, then, I guess.
Yeah, I just she'd remarried.
Okay.
Her husband had died when I was in Saudi.
Oh, okay.
So when I came back, it was convenient for both of us.
Sure.
So, yeah, I lived there. But yeah, by this time I was getting just completely fed up with the UK system. You know, it was, everybody had a bit of you,
Right.
right? You'd come back off 2 months out in the North Sea, and the train drivers would be on strike.
Oh.
Then you're coming up, and the airline pilots are on strike.
Oh.
And then you'd be out to sea, and you come back again, and someone else would be
On strike.
on
Bus
strike.
drivers or whoever else.
Whoever,
Yeah.
everybody had a chunk of you.
Right.
Plus, as I say, you know, it was, no, you're limited to so many percent rise.
I can imagine that would be very disheartening to, you know, I mean, you see some other guy, you know, with another company or from America or any other country
That's right.
come in and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm making this now and you're still stuck here. That's really terrible.
And
Yeah.
plus, as I say, you know, it was, you know, I hate to say it, but the technical manager, he was jealous.
Of your knowledge.
Yeah, you know, because basically, you know, we've got a problem. How do we fix this? And I'd just say, well, what about this? And he didn't like it.
Of what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, you get all sorts of roadblocks put up
Right.
and
political
political rubbish, and you just say, oh,
Yeah.
it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
You know, and I looked at the whole system. I was interested. Unfortunately, you know, in my lifetime, I suppose I could have pushed harder for more money, but that wasn't my main interest. My main interest was the work I was doing.
Yeah, you're very interested in the specifics of,
Right.
of the job. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, I'm trying to push. Hey, we need to get more into microprocessors. We don't need to reinvent the bloody wheel every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, we can't afford this. We can't afford that. In the end, I just said to hell with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in '78, I saw an advert for Aramco,
Okay.
and I said to hell with it. That's it.
And so you went back to Saudi Arabia.
So I went back to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Because I went there with the, I mean, it tells you, I went there with an HP 75, 74, 50 oscilloscope.
Okay. So you took equipment with you to your job that was your own.
Right. I took oscilloscope. I took a PC, original box PC.
Okay. Like an XT.
No, this was before XTs.
Oh, okay.
This was in the days of CPM.
Oh,
in fact, it was even prior to CPM.
Okay. But what happened to what happened to the deck?
The deck, I just left it.
Oh, yeah, it's gone.
I just left it at home.
Oh, you left it home.
For the time being.
Yeah. So you took a PC and an oscilloscope with you?
Well, no, basically what I did was I took a bunch of parts.
Oh, okay.
with the oscilloscope,
Oh, okay.
with this thing. Okay, I've already built one,
Right.
6800.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can see that they're now getting into magnetic drives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the 8-inch,
Right. 8-inch floppies.
8-inch floppies.
Right.
At that time they were 250K, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or might have been 500K. They weren't 1 meg.
Right.
At that time they were either
Yeah.
250 or
Yeah, 256 sounds about right.
yeah.
And I think it was 500 something for double-sided or something.
Right.
I could be wrong on that.
But
Yeah.
anyway, they were the
Yeah.
8-inch.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Because after that, they went to the
In fact, they went 5.25.
That was
And then they
low density
started.
256.
And then
Yeah.
they started on the
3.5s.
hard drive. You know,
The 3.5.
a 10 megabyte.
Oh. Oh, the
10 megabyte hard drive.
right. Okay. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. The MFM drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So I specifically went over there to basically get some cash,
Mm-hmm.
and also to get the time.
Mm-hmm. Get the time.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean? The time in the digital computing.
No, the time to yourself.
Oh, to yourself. Oh, okay.
Right? Because.
Why is that?
Okay.
if I can ask. Yeah.
Okay. In Saudi, you go to work 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally 5 minutes from work.
Mm-hmm.
You've got at that time, 1-bedroom apartment, which is 5 minutes from work.
Mm-hmm.
You finish work at 4 o'clock. You've then got from 4 o'clock until 7 o'clock the next morning, free.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got all that time you can do. Now, normally, when I was working in London, you start work at 9, you finish work at 5:30, but you actually leave home at 8, and you get home at 7.
Okay. So this is what you're saying about time is you spent so much time in transit. You basically spent
That's right.
2 hours of your day in transit.
Right.
Much like what we do today in traffic here.
Right. And then you've got to eat.
Right.
And so you get no social life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially in London.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go anywhere, you've got to go central London.
Right.
So, you get home at 7 o'clock. You've got to eat. If you go into central London, that's going to take another hour. The last train is at 11.
Mm-hmm. Much like here as well. And so then you're done.
So that's it.
So and you're able to do that in Saudi Arabia?
What you're able to do in Saudi Arabia,
Mm-hmm.
you live in a camp.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes to work, 5 minutes back from work. Cafeteria, which is basically subsidized. What they do is you have to pay for it, but they basically say, here's money for food and lodging.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got that amount of day left to do what you want to do.
Right. Okay. So what did you do?
I learned
computer code.
hardware, software,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Basically, so you educated yourself
Yes.
more.
Yeah. Because, and while I was there, it was, even though I was employed as a basic instrument tech, because at that stage they didn't have electronic techs.
Mm-hmm.
And I got involved in one of the first 6800 turbine controllers. This was about XSI, which was a controller for a 7,000 horsepower gas turbine.
Cool. For generating electricity, or
no, compressing gas.
Oh, compressing gas.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
When I arrived in Saudi,
Wow, I didn't know that that's a bit. Okay, that's cool.
when I arrived in Saudi, Dhahran is the input airport, and where I was going is about 150 miles away. I arrived at about 7 o'clock at night, and then we were driven up to New Delhi, which was our camp. And as you're driving along the road, every 10 miles or so, you see an enormous glow in the sky. They're flaring off gas.
Right.
And they've been doing this for
Years.
50 years.
Yeah. They still do that here.
And somebody finally said to them, do you realise you were burning an awful lot of money? You can get a lot of money for that gas. Can we? Yes, you can. If you take a gas oil separation plant, it's basically a very simple plant. It's a couple of tanks. They pump water in, the oil comes up, it's under pressure, and they have a gas oil separation. It's just, basically the oil floats.
Right.
Water's it's coming up under water pressure, so they separate out the water. So there's the oil coming off, that's fine. What's all this other stuff? Oh, that's gas, burn it off. So, as you say, you're looking down the road, and every 10 miles you've got this enormous, I mean, literally, you're talking about flames 50, 100 feet high.
Whoa.
And they've been doing this for
50 plus years.
Plus years.
And so now they're piping that into a
So
reclamation plant.
So, yes, that's what they decide. We're going to take all this gas, refrigerate it, and then pump it to to the gas plant.
And that turbine is what compresses it to liquid gas, I'm assuming? Liquid?
Yes.
Compressed
Yeah.
Liquid natural gas,
Yeah.
right? I didn't know that's how they did that.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. Huh. Okay.
But anyway, there were a lot of teething problems. This was one of the first digital controllers. I ended up having, again, I was the only person who basically with any electronic knowledge. So I ended up babysitting that project. We sued them, and I had to come over to, I was technical expert for Aramco.
You were on a contract for Aramco.
I was a contract for Aramco.
Yeah. How long was that for?
In the end, I ended up 15 years.
For 15 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the end,
same company.
In the end, they took us off yearly contract and put us on permanent contract.
Sorry.
But they also screwed us.
Oh.
In the end.
But you got a fantastic salary out of
Nope.
that. No?
Nope.
Oh. Not after 15 years of service? Wow.
One of the things I found.
But better than being, in the North Sea, though. Right?
Oh yeah, no question, better than being in the North Sea.
Yeah.
But compared to, they had 4 salary structures. US, Arab, UK and other European, not American.
Right. Not a, yeah, okay. American, Arab, and not American.
Right.
or,
And then,
or Arab.
and then Asian and other Arabs.
Oh, Asian and other. Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
So these were
Yeah.
people like Filipinos,
Mm-hmm.
Thais,
Mm-hmm.
Indians, all these people. For example, the Americans, they were literally dragging them off the streets of Houston. They would go up to people and say, "Are you instrument electrical or mechanical? Do you have any experience in any of those fields?" If they said yes, we'd say, "Okay, we've got a job for you in Saudi Arabia." And they had, if you had any experience, you could take your family, your children, you'd have equivalent of an army house. You know the army type barrack home.
Yeah.
You know, they're all regular 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, whatever. But you know, for example, somebody who had, let's say, a couple of semesters of education, let's say instruments, he'd be classified as grade code 7, a basic beginner. Grade code 8 is a little bit higher. A fully qualified craftsman who served an apprenticeship is grade code 11. Right? For an American, grade code 7, any grade code, they could have their family. For me as a Brit, if I was grade code 13, which is foreman or above, I could petition to have a family.
Oh.
Only if you're grade code 14, as a Brit, would I be entitled as a right to have my family.
Wow.
And
that's a pretty huge discrepancy.
Enormous discrepancy.
Yeah.
Even as a grade code 14, which is what I was, I still earned probably about half of what a grade code 8 American would earn. That's indirect salary.
Wow.
In indirect salary, Americans could have pension plan, which we couldn't.
You could not?
No. No, well, let me qualify that. Initially, when we went there, we were told we would get the Saudi pension, which would be, you know, the typical 2/3 of your final month's salary, whatever.
Right.
I've been there 10 years, and they suddenly said, "No, sorry, that pension is no longer there. We're buying it back. We're buying it from you, $10,000."
And that was it.
And that was it.
Yeah. No. Again, no protesting.
No protest.
No legal ramifications. Nothing.
No.
Wow. Okay.
Any American who was there for 10 years was virtually guaranteed to be a multimillionaire. They had healthcare. I think it was for life. They had pension plans, whatever.
Just because they were
Because they were Americans.
Interesting. I wonder if it's the same way today.
I don't know. I know when I was there,
Yeah.
there was a bad situation where um, they were moving a shipping container. They were in within the plant. They had a shipping container, and they were going to lift it out over the fence. So they had a crane over there, shipping container. I think it was Filipino standing on top of the container. They lifted it up, hit the overhead 15 kV line, killed the Filipino. The guy who was running it was an American superintendent.
The crane, or the job?
No, he was running the job.
Right.
When the report came out, he was 200 miles away. There were two Brits who were coming in the gate at the time. They were deported that night because they had supervised the job. Whether they got compensation, that I presume they did. But the guy who actually did it
was nowhere.
He was 200
nowhere
miles
on the
away.
report. Yeah.
Nowhere near.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, interesting favoritism there.
I went there the first day I went out on the job. There was American foreman, fine, and he said, Randall, you go out with Don. So we went out, and they had a problem with one of the electronic cabinets. Don said, I know about this system. Fine, what can I do to help? He then proceeded to take it apart. And he did, he kind of, he wrecked the system. Literally wrecked the system. You know, you try to talk to him, no, I know what I'm doing. You know, you just stand out in the way. Turns out he'd had one semester at one of the community colleges. He'd had.
He was good on paper.
He had
maybe.
He had 10 jobs in 8 years. He'd been a policeman. He'd been a used car salesman. He was one of these guys that he was grade code 7.
He was one of the guys they pulled off the street.
He was one of the guys they pulled off the street.
I've worked a radio before. Wow.
And this is what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why they started recruiting basically Brits.
Right.
Because they were taking guys who had been, you know, for example, a Brit machinist, grade code 11, fully trained. He'd have served a full apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce or one of those, a similar sort of company. He could take down an engine down to its absolute last nut and bolt.
Yeah.
He'd mic it all up, change whatever needed, put it back together, set everything to within tolerance, press a button and it would start. That's what you had to be able to do.
Right.
So you're talking about a guy with full apprenticeship plus a minimum of 5 years post-apprenticeship experience in the field.
Right.
A grade code 10, full apprenticeship in 2 years. You know, as opposed to people who say, yeah, I'm a mechanic. I've changed out these motors before,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the guy who's,
Yeah.
I've stripped it down to
Right.
its last nut and bolt.
That's pretty. Again, that's pretty amazing disparage there.
Right. So
Yeah.
all I can say is, yeah, it suited me.
But you had a good time there.
I had a good time,
Yeah.
and I can't complain about that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me like, from all the previous jobs that you had, or places that you worked, or whatever, that you stuck around for this one the longest.
Yeah, I did.
So you had to have, to work 15 years for one company. I have not. I've only worked for one company. I think 6 years long, and that was I was pretty impressed with that. You know,
I did it
15 years
because
fantastic. Work relationship. You know.
as I say, I've never been that concerned about money. It was
It's just interesting for you.
it was enough. It was interesting, and what's more,
Yeah.
I did a couple of when I went there. Second or third year I was there. By that time, we had the very first PCs out. Proper PCs with 5 1/4 inch drives.
Right.
Just beginning to get languages. When I went there, one of my friends was the chief accountant. Now, usually producing, which was the operations and maintenance, at that time produced 1/6 of the free world oil. We produced, better part of
The Aramco company.
that was one part of Aramco.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, that is
Made how much? What again? 1/6.
1/6 of
Wow.
the free world oil. We were producing 3 million barrels a day.
Wow.
And our budget was a lot of money.
Right.
And I was talking to our chief accountant, who was a Brit, and he was saying, "Oh, we're coming up to budget." He said, so we were talking. He said, "What they do." He had a team of, I think it was 6 accountants, and they would have their calculators, and they would input all the numbers, and then they'd start working it out. And next morning, they would present their paper to the managers, and the managers would look at it and they'd say, let's change this, let's change that. Give them their changes, they'd go back, enter all this data in, and next morning they'd work all night and then give them their paper back. So I said, I can do that for you. So he said, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm sure I can do it. I said, what I'd need to do is, I'll do it, but you need to verify it. I'll do it, but you audit it for me. And that's what I did. I had 6 weeks to do it before I went on vacation. So that's what I did. And, there were 4 divisions. 4 divisions in maintenance, 4 divisions in operations. So we're talking budget of hundreds of millions. And things that they were doing was manpower forecast, So you had to break down the manpower by American, Saudi, Arab,
The four different salary styles.
the
Yeah.
4 different salary
Yeah.
styles,
Yeah.
and the grade codes in each of them,
Mm-hmm.
plus various other
Mm-hmm.
things.
So what did you use for that? I mean, did you write an accounting program or something? Or?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I wrote an accounting program. You know, in 6 weeks you're limited to what
Yeah.
you can do.
Sure.
But what it meant in the end was that they had they input the basic data, then ran the analysis, which gave them all the costs, manpower, and everything else, and it gave them the answer within literally, you know, as fast as they could input, key in the data.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Very cool.
So I did that one, and then I did another one for them.
In 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty amazing.